Alright guys, welcome back to another Overwatch video. I kind of want to change it up. I know some of you have been enjoying the shoutcasting videos, but right now I wanted to go down to a hero discussion. The latest patch for Overwatch has been one of the better ones in my opinion, where most of the characters are essentially viable in the game, except for maybe one or two that we just don't see that often. But overall, we're seeing a vast amount of diverse compositions where we're having 3 or 4 tanks, 2 or 3 healers, 3 DPS. We're seeing a large variation of compositions go on in the game, and it's pretty fun to see. And almost every character is good right now, and I feel that the roles that do that the most right now, and it's the ones that we'll be talking about in the video, are supports and tanks. And joining me today in this video is Futtbutter, my brother. You have seen him possibly in our podcast together. Where sometimes he'll join us. So welcome, Futtbutter.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
This
Glad
isn't.
to be here.
Yeah. So this isn't like a super series where we do number breakdowns for the characters. That's a completely different discussion. This is just kind of how we feel about the characters, where we think they are right now in the current meta, and how we like them just in general, how we feel when we see them in play. So I think we'll start with supports, and I think start with a safe pick like Mercy. How's that sound, man?
Sounds good to me.
So what do you think about Mercy? What do you think about her right now?
I haven't been seeing her in much play, either quick play or competitive matches. It just seems to me like she's a little too dependent on her teammates in order to perform. I think she's a great support in terms of her healing ability and certainly her reses and everything. But if your teammates are pretty crappy, you're gonna have a really bad time. So I think where I'm at and in the kind of play that I do, where it's a lot of solo queuing or whatever, or it's not like really coordinated teams, it's not high competitive play. I just don't see Mercy pick that often because she's very dependent on her teammates, in my estimation.
Well, I think a lot of supports are right now. I think a lot of them can fall under that category because dive composition is a pretty predominant thing where you run Winston, Genji, Tracer, and I'm not saying that's the best composition, but that's a composition you'll see often run, and it's kind of hard to survive as a support, especially let's say as Zenyatta or Mercy or even Ana a little bit. So I definitely can see that, and definitely in the solo queue, you see a lot of those DPS fiends that love playing Genji, and it's just hard to get them off of you. And if you don't really have like a coordinated teammate or someone on your pocket, like a Pharah on your team, it's kind of hard to survive as Mercy. But I find that, and we still, the thing is we're seeing Mercy again, due to her healing change. She heals a lot faster now, and with combined with the Pharah, we're just seeing her slightly more often, right? And I think that's a good change. And it's not like every game, where the problem before, and I think you can agree with me, is that we had a Mercy every game. It would come down to who had Mercy ult last, right?
Yeah, I think it was always the battle of the Mercy ults, which was kind of unfun. It just really made team fights feel sort of futile a lot of the time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think right now is a really good place, because what you're saying is, yeah, it's hard to survive, but I think for a character like Mercy, I think that's a good thing. And in fact, even though they did some changes, like it takes longer to get our ultimate and things along those lines, it's actually slightly easier to survive because you can move while casting ultimate. So they added slightly more utility to her kit and higher healing, but like the overall firepower of her ultimate has definitely been dumbed down, and I think that was like the biggest problem with her. But the way I see it now is, now there's the way she is now is there's more support combinations you can do with her, right? And it's not like she's used every comp. Generally, you're seeing her more with high health targets, or generally with the Pharah, right? Or things along those lines. And I think that's something Blizzard has been doing lately, is they're making combination characters, right? And since they're no longer doing multiple characters on the same team, now they're trying to, from my point of view, I'm seeing them doing a lot of combinations, right? Like an example, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, is like on a Reinhardt, right? Mercy, Pharah, right? Things like that, where you combine these abilities, you combine these characters, and their potential rises. You know what I mean, right? Like,
Yeah.
having a Mercy as a Pharah is like the greatest thing, but having a Pharah as a Mercy is even better, because you were talking about how it's hard to survive. Well, boom, your survivability increases dramatically because a lot of people can't hit you, and there's a lot of fall off damage. So you're able to escape with that pocket buddy, and it just gives you access to an escape route that Mercy has in her kit. So
Yeah.
I think overall I like her where she's at, and
Yeah, I do too. I think she's good where she's at.
I don't want her to get buffed.
Yeah, I don't either. I think my point before was simply that I think other supports feel a little more versatile to me. Like, so for instance, Lucio, he has a lot of utility with his speed boost. He has more survivability than she does, better escape mechanics. He also can get environmental kills in ways that she can't, and so he's particularly strong on certain maps.
Yeah.
Zenyatta can do a lot of damage. He can shred through tanks. He also has survivability when he ults. So I feel like whenever I play Mercy, I just feel like I'm kind of a battery. I'm just moving around and trying to power up my teammates and trying to keep my teammates alive, which is great if my teammates are doing well, but I basically do no damage, and I'm entirely dependent on my teammates in order to, basically kill the enemy team or to.
And
to,
in a solo
secure
queue
objectives.
experience, I can agree. It feels harder to do something. So
Yeah, if your teammates are great, then it feels really satisfying being Mercy.
because
you're
then you
rezzing
get
them and
to
healing them.
res them, and
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. You were mentioning Lucio and Zenyatta, and I find that both of them are kind of have a lot of similar roles in their ultimates, but let's kind of start with Lucio. Both of them kind of dominated the meta after Mercy was nerfed. We kind of only saw Lucio Zenyatta as a combination, but now we see a lot of Lucio still, probably more, but a lot less Zenyatta due to his nerfs to Discord Ore. But let's start with Lucio. I'm liking the place where he's at, and I think he's necessary because the way they've done, and I've mentioned this before, is that they've nerfed a lot of the healers, and I think it's somewhat for the better, but I think Blizzard is kind of embracing the idea of 2 supports, right, on a team.
Right.
And generally when you're playing competitive, if you don't have 2 supports, it's really hard to play it out. Like, some people get away with it because their DPS is good enough, but it's so hard in tournaments, it's so hard in competitive or even in quick play to go against a double healing comp, because the healers can heal each other and all that. And Lucio is a great addition to that, is because he has the utility of speed, and then he adds that AoE heal. So he can't do like the super hard healing that a Mercy or an Ana does, where they're just the highest healing per second, right? They're just pumping out healing, and they're going to keep that one person alive. But, they can't run over to the other side as quickly or do all that. The reason why I really like Lucio is that even though he's not healing a ton on average, he lets each of your teammates survive 1 extra shot, and that's just super important just in general, because one, it gives your team time to react, to save that person. Your Zarya can be like, oh, I can bubble that guy, or Reinhardt can run over and shield him, right? It just gives that, and that's just so important overall in team fights, and like that's why he's so good in King of the Hill, that it adds a dynamic. And not only that, he, unlike other supports, he has engaged potential. He can speed other players up. Like, everything about him is not that he's technically strong himself, is that he makes everyone on his team have something extra to themselves, right? It's not like he does a ton of damage. Zenyatta is significantly higher damage. Ana is significantly higher healing. He just gives everyone that little extra, right? And kind of in the veins of old Symmetra, where, remember, she had that huge shield before,
Right.
and it gave everyone 1 to 2 extra shots that they could survive, and that was ridiculously OP, and it was used on attack. That's kind of what he does, but instead of extra health, he just gives you extra healing, right? That's kind of where it falls under. So, like, you see probably Lucio almost every game in your solo queue matches, right?
I see him a lot, yeah, and he's just. I think part of the reason for that is just, where I am at plat, whatever. You know, he's just kind of a no-brainer. He's not particularly complicated. Um, he just does great healing to the whole team. He doesn't require a ton of skill to play, or at least I think lower level players don't think he does, at least. So yeah, he sees a lot of play.
I think like the basic skills pretty easy to learn for him compared to a lot of the other supports, because you're able to somewhat be on the front line, but there is a lot of like technical things like where to boop, right? How to position, when to speed, when to heal, right?
Yeah.
What to look for in your engages. Also, his ultimate is probably it's probably in my opinion the strongest, and it's why I had to get nerfed. Is one of the strongest support ults. Is because it denies so many things. You get Zarya ulted, boom, you can save your team practically. In my eyes, I find it to be a technically better version of Zenyatta for multiple reasons, right? Zenyatta can't stop burst damage, right? When you have a Zarya Tracer combo, the Tracer will kill you through the Zenyatta heal. It does not work against the Lucio ultimate, right? Lucio ultimate has an application that Zenyatta ult will never have, and that's bonus health. It might not be as good against damage over time, like a good Roadhog ultimate or a lot of swings from a Reinhardt, but it will stop burst damage and a lot of consistent damage as well. So
right.
I just find that the overall usage and defensive capability of his ultimate is just slightly stronger, but both of them are very good for team fights, right? They deny a lot of other ultimates from other characters.
Right.
So I think that's kind of the gist of Lucio, who's, in my opinion, just like a very interesting character. And he's just, in my eyes, hopefully they don't nerf him, because I find him to be in a really good place right now, because they did nerf his engage potential, which is, in my opinion, very necessary, because just having that super fast speed in was crazy. But he's just a very fun character. He's a very good character, and he adds a lot to a team dynamic in almost every composition. So I think he's a good character.
I think so too. I like him.
Next up is Zenyatta. This guy has kind of had ups and downs. Initially, he had low health, and this is something that even Lucio and Genji had this temporary treatment, and only now Tracer has it. Is any character that has 150 health is instantly bad, except for Tracer, and that's because she has high mobility. But you're one-shottable by so many targets. You're susceptible to AoE. Like, there's all these dangers of that. But ever since he got that health buff and his ultimate had higher healing, he's just become an insane monster. And of course they tweaked him down, so he's used a lot less, but he's still a monster on King of the Hill. He's still really consistent overall. He's actually very good at dueling. He has the potential to beat like a Tracer, and the reason why is he has such good damage output even at a range that he can generate ult really quickly. When you see like a Roadhog or a Winston, you're able to quickly build up your ultimate and do that. And all of it kind of focuses around his Discord orb, because it's like a better version of Mercy Boost, because instead of buffing one person, you're essentially buffing 6 people on your team on one person specifically. And if you're a coordinated team, or even not on a coordinated team, you just see the Discord orb, and even if you have 2 people collapse on that guy, that person's usually going to die, right? So of course they had to definitely dumb it down a lot, but he's just like an insanely aggressive support, but then completely goes to 180 when he goes to his ultimate. And as I was saying, it's very similar to Lucio's, but drops just a huge amount of healing per second, and that denies like every damage or consistent damage ultimate like Roadhog or Farah, but it doesn't stop ultimates like Tracer. So What do you think of Zenyatta? Because you were in the beta, you've seen the lifespan of Zenyatta much longer than I have. So, like, how do you feel of the growth of that character and the changes he's been through?
I think he's much better than where he was before. I mean, where he was before, it was just kind of silly. You know, he just was just so weak and so squishy, and just had whatever support he was able to provide was short-lived, and so he really provided very little, like basically no support.
Yeah.
So I think he's in a good place now. I kind of feel like now he's a little undertuned with the change they made to his Discord, which is a little unfortunate. I wish they hadn't have done that, but you know.
I'm actually kind of glad they did that, because it was just making certain team fights too quick and making certain characters too high damage.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like now we have like kind of a tank heavy meta, and I feel like that's partially because Zenyatta is not so effective at taking tanks down.
I actually don't think it's because of Zenyatta. I think it's because of Ana, and we're about to talk about that in a second here. I was gonna save her for last, because I find that she's kind of the most important support here, and I think the biggest criminal of what people would call the tank meta. And there's a lot to discuss on that end. Sure. But the Discord orb was very helpful for dealing with tanks, or even a lot of people wouldn't even put it on tanks. Like when you get to higher level play, where generally I play, or even you see it, you'll see it generally on the Genji, because just even AoEing him down or just hitting him with any shot, just making it so you can, instead of like killing him with 4 shots or 3 shots, killing him in 2 is just so huge in a fight, right? Because sure, you don't want that Genji to get healed, you don't want that dynamic to happen. So it's a very interesting. Next up, probably the least picked support, but in my opinion, I still think she's very good on certain maps, and she adds a unique dynamic, is Symmetra. I wouldn't say this is her strongest point, but I still feel like a lot of people just like leave her out, and just because she doesn't have heals. But like in certain triple support comps or even double support comps, which you can sometimes get away with, having that bonus HP even a little bit, and also having a teleporter is so helpful, because it just gives you that, it saves the time, and it lets your defense get there faster and have a lot more times to contest points or objectives. And I think we're gonna see some of her throughout this patch. This patch people are still trying to figure things out, but I think a lot of people are figuring out that this patch is pretty well balanced, and a lot of people are viable, except for maybe D.va and somewhat Soldier 76 and Bastion, even though they are still used on a small occasion. So yeah, what do you think of Symmetra, man? Because she used to be ridiculously strong.
Yeah, I think I just don't see her that often. It seems like people just play her largely for her ultimate. With the prevalence of tanks and also just really strong AoE, Winston being as strong as he is and being played as much as he is, and also Zarya, just people who can really clear her sentries pretty effectively. I just don't see her as much anymore, which is a little unfortunate in my opinion. Her ult's still so strong. Yeah, that's really the only reason she's played.
The thing I feel though is that her turrets have never been strong, because like the better people got in the game's lifespan, is that people were quicker to respond to her turrets, and she was just meant to have some in her pocket to just quickly throw down in the middle or right before a fight to do like a slow or a little amount of damage, because Tracer I can be a mile away and just pop those things in a second, or a lot of characters can, right? It's just overall they're not like her effective means of damage or combat at all.
Right. So now they just feel like they're just kind of a mild.
I just find that as the player base gets better, things change. Remember when a lot of people started playing the game. People were like, man, Torbjorn and Bastion are really hard to deal with. But then when we got farther into the game, people were like, man, they're not so great, right? And I think a lot of characters fall under that. Like, you remember for a while, people were like, oh, McCree is just okay. And then people were like, okay, if you're really good with this character, he's a monster, right? So I think that falls under it. That's kind of like how it falls under. So I think there is a place for her in the game, and I would love to see more of her. And I do think a lot of people underestimate the power of that character.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I like when she's played. I just don't see her play that often.
The criminal of the tank meta is here. The final support that we're going to talk about, Ana. I would say out of all of the supports, she needs a nerf. She needs to be changed like soon, and I'm not saying that, of course she's not picked every game, but she is a danger to so many team compositions and how games are played. And it's not because of her healing or her sleep or even like the effect of her ultimate, right? The problem is how often she has her ultimate. And the bio grenade is very strong. You know, you can deny Zenyatta ult, all those things. That's an interesting mechanic, and yes, it's very strong, but the fact that we're just seeing so many competitive teams, or even just in like competitive queue, just pick her up and just abuse her ultimate. And here's the problem, right? You know how people complain about Mercy heal? Like, this is a little bit of number stuff, and I said I wouldn't, but like, to show a comparison is like your Mercy who is healing tanks, you know, you'd have a Roadhog or a Reinhardt or Winston. Your Mercy would generate, this is old Mercy ultimate. She would generate it, the quickest amount of time was about 22 seconds, right? The fastest time for Ana to generate her ult, due to them buffing her attack speed, due to them buffing, like, you know, the amount of ammo in her clip, she can get her ultimate in about 10 to 12 seconds. And going further into that, her ultimate is ridiculous for how often you get it, right? You run it with a Reinhardt, and the armor effect stacks with her ability, right? So she halves your damage, and then if your damage falls underneath 10 damage, then that is once again halved, because the way armor works is if you're 10 or more damage, then it's reduced by 5. But if you're less than 10 damage, then it's half. So if I'm someone like Reaper and I have pellets, right? Your shots are pellets, then his damage is reduced by 75%. Right?
Yeah, right.
So it's half and half. And that's just such a dangerous dynamic. And the fact that she can have it up so frequently, and all you need to do is be in line of sight, she can stay far away and all that. And not only that, the thing that irks me about her, and it's not a terrible thing, is since they buffed her attack speed, she has this really frustrating duel mechanic that if you're 200 HP or less, you will win every single duel if she hits you with a sleep dart. If she shoots E shoots, or shoots E melee like a Tracer, or any of those characters, they will instantly die. They have no way to survive it. They will instantly die. If you do not have 250 HP or more, and you get hit by a sleep dart and you're one-on-one with her, you are guaranteed to die. That's just a frustrating component for me, but like the real reason that she bothers me is just how often she has her ults up, and since her healing is so high, it's just so hard to kill all these tanks, right? She's just boom, boom, boom. You have a Discord orb on a tank, she's out healing your Discord orb.
Yeah.
That's the problem. It's not Zenyatta's Discord orb is bad. It's still very effective. It lets you generate ults on all of your teammates very quickly. You do a lot of damage. You can focus someone down. But when you have a character who then buffs her own healing, and then every shot is 120 healing, and she has it at a 1.3 shots per second, that's pretty ridiculous from what it was, right? It used to be like, I think 0.9 or 1 shots per second. That's a drastic difference. So
yeah, I agree that she feels, especially when paired with certain tanks, she just feels too strong.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. And I think it was something people were taking, I think it was something that was just building. It was a discovery that, like, we didn't know, like, there was some things that I was concerned about is like, and I've mentioned this before and other people did, but you know, we didn't really know, but the concern for Ana was they didn't compensate, right? They did all these buffs. They buffed her ammo. They buffed her attack speed. Her healing per second who's already higher than any other character in the game, right? What does this mean for her ultimate? And that's always been the danger for all the supports, right? Where they've had to nerf the ult percentages and what they do, right? On every support is essentially gone through like a little like checklist on like tweaking, and I feel like they just didn't do that for her when they did these changes. I don't know if that was purposeful. I don't know if it was along those lines, but you know, it was very interesting dynamic there. So yeah, that's Ana in a nut.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So I think that's it for supports. I think we can quickly go through tanks now. So the tanks in this game, man, I love them right now. They're very strong. Overall, of course, you see a lot of things, but like the one that we probably see the most right now is Zarya. And the reason why is that, and I think you can agree with me, is she fits in most compositions.
Yeah, that's true. I can't really think of a composition where she doesn't fit pretty well.
She's good on King of the Hill. She's good on payload. She's good on capture points. You know,
she's good offense. She's good defense. She's good pretty much in almost any. She's so versatile.
She's good against Reinhardt compositions because she can absorb his fire strike and get full energy. She's good with a Winston comp because you can shield your Winston and he'll go in and absorb energy. So you know you'll see her in dive comps, right? You see her in King of the Hill because she's good in team fight comps because she has the glue to end team fights like no other character has an ultimate like hers, where she can close out a fight, right? And that's sometimes desperately needed in these games where you need to close out a fight to win the game, right? Let's say you get last point Hanamura, right? Their spawn is so close. You need a good, well-played Zarya ult to end your game. Yeah. And no other tank can do that. Yes, of course you might get a good Reinhardt ult, but does that cluster them? Does that guarantee maximum damage for all of your team's abilities? No. And I'm not, and here's the thing. I don't think Zarya is OP. And do you agree with me? I just find that she does she's just consistently does good. She just has a lot more utility, I guess, to her kit that other characters just don't have.
I don't think she's OP. I don't. I think she's just very versatile. She's pretty strong. But I've never once felt like either playing her or playing against her, I never felt like, oh wow, she's broken. You feel sometimes like you face really good Zaryas, and that can be frustrating, as it should be. And then sometimes you feel like you face mediocre Zaryas or poor Zaryas, and they don't feel very effective. And that to me is the sign of a balanced character, when you know you can feel how competent your adversary is. If they always feel really strong, that's when they start to feel broken. It's like it doesn't matter if the person is skilled or not; they're just kicking ass with this character.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think that's where the energy mechanic is so important. It separates the good from the bad Zaryas, and like how to time your Zarya shields and all that, and also not only that, her shields can block things. So there's such a high skill cap to her as a tank, and just her as positioning. It's just she's such a team-based character that combos with so many characters that it's hard not to run a comp without her, right? And that's why out of all the tanks, I believe she's the one that's picked kind of the most. And not even as a main tank, she is the off tank. She just, you know, adds to the team. She's not the main driving force, you know. And speaking of the main driving force, let's talk about my main man, Reinhardt. Reinhardt is the king of tanks, you know. If Zarya is the off tank queen, then Reinhardt is generally, his pick rate has gone on a slight decline, but you know, he's still picked on a high amount. And I think you and I know why. You know, just huge shield, it's hard to break down, it lets your team advance. He does.
Yeah, he feels so strong. He's one of those ones who just starts to feel a little broken to me. I just feel like I never face a bad Reinhardt. That's just me. Well,
I think it's just there's very few high skill mechanics to him, but the reason I would say he feels so strong right now is because the supports are so strong, specifically Ana, and that's why Ana's keep on ulting these Reinhardts, is because Reinhardt I feel has like pretty good decent base stats that are effective, right? He doesn't have range, but he has a lot of decently high damage abilities. None of them really one shot, but all of them are very high damage. The one thing I could say that they could possibly nerf for him as a character is his ultimate, and not the damage, not the stun duration, just how fast it charges, right? I find that a lot of characters, out of all many characters, even though Reinhardt is never really technically on the front line or hitting people or doing a lot of damage, he generates ult incredibly fast, and that's really scary as a tank because his ultimate is a stun, and stuns are very strong in any game, right? And that's a very effective ability to have. So the fact that he can generate up so quickly is really strong, and that's the only thing I can really see that makes him a little bit ridiculous. But I would say kind of he's not the main criminal of why we're seeing strong Reinhardts, because we see a lot of compositions without Reinhardt and substitute it in with the Winston, right? So you can have a more aggressive dive composition, just something he can't do. I find that he's just so good at making your team advance. The other team has a lot of hit scan characters and doing that. And the reason I'm afraid if they nerf him is that we'll just see a huge surge of these hit scan characters that, it'll just be so hard to advance into, corridors or to checkpoints. And I think nerfing him would just cause a big shake to the meta that I don't know that players are ready for yet, right? So that's kind of my, I guess, counter argument to saying that Reinhardt's OP. I just find him to be just very strong because Zarya is picked more often than him, and I think there's a unique reason for that.
Right.
So kind of like Reinhardt's counterpart, Winston, right? He's they both fulfill the same thing. They both have shields. They both let you advance, but in very different ways. Reinhardt is kind of generally slower unless you have, Lucio speed up. Advancement, kind of like a phalanx, if you will. Planet Wars, I think that's purposefully in their design. But Winston is just, you dive in, you have a Genji Tracer or just a Genji, and they're right there with you, and you're diving their backline. You're causing disruption. You're just going in. You probably have a Zarya bubble on you, and you're just causing havoc. You're throwing the other team into disarray, and he's not he's a very high skills character because people don't understand how to do damage with him, and this is one of the many reasons why I find that he has an advantage over D.va. Is not only does he have a shield, not only does he have like a better damage output jump, his damage output jump is better to burst with, right? It's because for D.va, you knock them back, you hit them, they fly away. It's like, oh my goodness, it's hard to combo a melee into that and then start shooting them and landing your hits. For him, he'll land on you, right? Because his leap does a ton of damage. You can melee and start shooting like crazy. And it's just such a high burst, and it kills so many supports so quickly that aren't prepared. And he's another character that if you put an Ana boost on him and he's managed to get to the back line, he's going to kill all the supports. So he's just very strong, and he's just so good on maps like King of the Hill. Like, you won't see many Reinhardts in King of the Hill, if any Reinhardt. And it's because Reinhardts are better on payloads because you are advancing slowly and you need that health shield. But on King of the Hill, man, you are going to see Winston every game with the Zarya. That's like pretty much it, unless you see more tanks and then they'll add other people along the way. But it's just Winston is so fast. He just opens up the other team, and that's so great, especially if you're a DPS player, because then you see an opening in the other team. You're like, oh, this guy's not near his support anymore, or this guy's near his support, and then you just kill them.
Yeah, he's very effective at that.
So yeah, how often do you play Winston, man?
A fair amount, but I mean, I'm usually just kind of honestly trolling with him just because he's just like he's like such a fun trolley kind of character.
The memes, man, the memes. Bring on.
Exactly.
So yeah.
But I wouldn't say that I like. I don't play him that often, just because I do find it a little difficult to get a lot of damage off with him. I know it's possible to do. I just don't have the skill, or at least I haven't developed the skill. So.
Well, it's generally depending like where they're placed. I would say, you know, if they're in a corner, it's a lot easier to do it because the wall itself will help you guarantee the landing, right?
Yeah.
Generally, the thing is people don't understand how easy it is to control his jump. In team fights, just look straight up and jump, like flick up, and then you can re-land somewhere because you're actually become like very mobile. It's kind of like you have a hover pack and you're just going down with a parachute because you have like complete control of where you're falling during that effect. So there's just a lot of like a lot of like little mobility tricks and damage tricks that you can do to pull it off, and it helps with your survivability.
Right.
Of course, his ultimate is nowhere like it's fine because it gives you healing, and you know you can on certain maps it's really good for knocking them off the map, but I wouldn't say, you know, it's like this ultimate is amazing like Zarya's or even Reinhardt's, right? And even then you don't generate, I find, nowhere near as fast as Reinhardt usually, unless, you know, of course you're doing really well on Winston, then of course you're generating it faster. Right. Next up, you know, kind of Winston's like similar half is D.va. And there's just, I find so much wrong with this character. Already, as I mentioned, she doesn't have the burst, and she doesn't have, you know, the same essential aggressive support that a Winston does. Like, she does have a similar characteristics of Reinhardt, where, you know, you have defense matrix and you're absorbing shots, but the absorbing shots only go to that central area, and there's so many ways around that in that tiny zone. But even then, they recently nerfed it in the patch that we're currently on, where after you cancel it or stop using it, it takes 1 second now instead of, I believe, 0.5 seconds to reuse it. So as soon as it's down, 1 second in Overwatch is an enormous amount of time to punish that player. Right? So imagine if I'm Roadhog and I hook you. Well, you didn't turn it off, but I forced you to turn it off, and it's going to take you forever to turn it back on. You can't turn it on right away to absorb it. If I'm Roadhog, I can get maybe 2 shots off, and that means your shield is dead, and your headshot is very exposed, right? So I find that even though sometimes you'll see D.va picked, like sometimes you'll see on Nubani, right, where Winston and D.va are picked together because you need everyone to get on high ground as fast as possible and just be aggressive, or you see her picked because she delays the game. Like, she has a very interesting concept, but the way she plays the game is very similar to Winston, but Winston just has a lot more, as I would say, utility to his kit.
Right, yep, that makes sense to me.
And that's the thing, and I find D.va to be a very interesting character, you know, having essentially 2 characters where when one dies you get to play as another, and having that delay mechanic is somewhat interesting to me. So yeah, I think there's not a lot else to say about D.va besides that even her ult is slightly inconsistent. It's just hard to do because teams can react to it. They can speed out with Lucio, they can you know, they can block it, throw up a Mei wall, throw a Reinhardt shield, even a well-placed Winston shield. They all absorb that hit. So I don't find it to be that fantastic overall. All right, moving on to our final and most beautiful tank, Roadhog. He's a blast to play. Sometimes I feel like I'm playing a DPS, and unlike many of his tank counterparts, he has no armor health, but he has a boatload of health, which is kind of like a double-edged sword, as I think the best way to categorize him, his health pool, because your supports love you, but the DPS on the other team love you more. I think do you know what I'm saying? Or,
yeah, absolutely.
And it's a dynamic of where since he has no armor health but 600 HP, and you can be Tracer McCree, Hanzo anything and you're shooting at this guy, even another tank, like sometimes I'll be Zarya and I'll see Roadhog out by himself and the rest are being protected by a Reinhardt, I'll just start focusing down that Roadhog because I'm like, wow, that's 40, like his entire health pool is 40% of my ult charge. Let me just wail on this guy, right? So let me just start hitting him. And but the thing is, supports like Ana or even Mercy generate ults insanely fast because of that feature as well.
Right.
But you know, he has very unique pick potential. He can hook people, and especially with these multiple tank compositions, where your supports generally ult very quickly. He adds like the damage component because he has such high burst. He can one-shot any character with 250 HP or less, and it just completely decimates them. So if you're able to like land your hooks, he becomes like one of the biggest threats. And I think that's a really good way to just categorize him as a character.
Yeah, he feels really powerful. He just does so much damage, and yeah, he feels very effective.
Yep, and his ultimate is quite efficient in, you know, comboing with Zarya due to the damage, but it's like, I wouldn't say the strongest ult. It's easy to cancel. It's also easy to kill him while he's using it, so I wouldn't say, oh, it's like a super OP ult. It is strong though, so he's a pretty good character. But overall, I would say he's like somewhere in the middle for tanks. You know, he doesn't have that same pressure or authority that, you know, Reinhardt, Winston, and Zarya bring to the table. I think those guys are like the trinity of tanks, where, you know, you'll see a cycle through those guys. And then Roadhog just feels like, you know, the third wheel that is sometimes added to the party. Like, you know, hey guys, I'm here. I deal damage. And I think that's the best way to describe him. So
Yeah.
And there we go, guys. Those are our thoughts and the current discussion about tanks and supports and the current patch of Overwatch. Thank you, Tim, for joining me, and thank you guys for watching this video. So until then, we will talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye.